50% of the basketball season is behind us. We'll tell you how these two fans grade Greg Gard's performance along with the players. And a certain player is headed back to play at Camp Randall next year. I'm Rajeev. He's Justin. Here we go. Technical difficulties. There we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajeev and Justin, back together on a Monday this time to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, while it's still early in the Big Ten season, we are officially at the midway point of the entire 2024-25 basketball season. How's the team doing thus far, and what grades are we giving the players and the head coach? We get into some superlatives and answer the question, what one thing has surprised you the most this season? Luke Fickell made another staffing change, this time bringing in Jordan Reed to coach the wide receivers. How big of an impact could he have on this unit and in the recruiting department? And on the other side of the field, a certain cornerback we all love is headed back for one final year at Camp Randall. We are at the Bucky Report on YouTube and wherever you can find your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, so you know when we make new content. We certainly appreciate all of the support. Sorry to make the change to Monday this week. Honestly, yesterday was just a really good day of football. There's 3 games back to back to back. The Packers were on during our normal time slot. We have done the show during the Packers game, but not in the playoffs, so can't do that. But I don't know if Packer fans would have really cared to miss it, honestly.
Anyone who's seen me during the Badgers season when they're not playing well, the Packer game, let's just put it this way. Wisconsin sports teams are failing me miserably this year. At least the Brewers gave me something to be happy about during the regular season. The Packers, they're a lot like Wisconsin. Like, they do a lot of things that you look at and like, oh, that's cool. Like seeing young guys go out there and do something like Allegro. And then you see somebody go out there and do something like moronic, like Nixon getting that fumble on the opening kickoff on a ball that was a yard into the end zone with the new kickoff rules. Take it at the 30.
Look, I have to say something about that. I think that call was absolutely atrocious. We're gonna do this really quick. I honestly can't understand this at all. He was laying on his back. He had the ball. I understand that he didn't come away from the pile with it. It doesn't matter. He had the ball. There was video evidence, clear as day. He had possession. He was down. The play's over. End of discussion. Packers should have had the ball in the opening kickoff. I cannot believe that call stood when you have a clear angle of a clear recovery. I don't get it. And I think that rule is just, it's crazy. I was cheering for the Packers because, man, the Eagles, boy, I just don't like them, and I don't want to see them do well. Logan Brew asks, were you cheering for the Packers? The Eagles, definitely the Packers there. Now, to be fair, and to disappoint several of you, generally I do root against the Packers because, I went to college. Obviously, I went to Wisconsin, and all my friends were Packers fans. So I kind of enjoyed seeing them lose from time to time, but the hate's not really there anymore. I do not like the Eagles. One of my employees is an Eagles fan. He annoys the crap out of me with his Eagles stuff. So no, I was not. But anyway, that's why I moved the show to Monday. So thank you for joining us. Those of you who are making it live. If you're not, listening to this later, we're going to do some grades today. We're going to talk about basketball midway through the season.
Before we dive into this, because Tyler Schubert threw this comment up here, and I don't think we're going to probably go over it too much.
We could talk about him.
Let's talk about Nick Clayton in the Under Armour game. I have earmarked him as one of my dudes, and I am standing by that. And I absolutely will say, if this staff does not play him year one, they're morons. It doesn't have to be a starter, but you need to get him on the field. His quickness and explosiveness off the edge is something this team badly needs, and you need to just find a way to get him on the field. I'm sorry if you don't play this guy. This is Nick Herbig type upside in terms of his explosiveness off the edge.
Yeah, Zach Clayton. Zach Bartz also says, I bet he wishes his last name was Clayton. That'd be cool. Zach says Clayton had a day at the All-American game. Definitely that has that Zach Bond speed off the edge, and it gave some elite talent troubles like 5-star Michigan OT Andrew Babaloa. could see early playing time. So here's my thought about this. Look, to Tyler's point earlier about transferring, you're right. You got to get him on the field, but this is not Big Ten competition all the way through. This is not experienced athletes. Like, let's just sort of give him some time. Like, he needs to play. If it's a Lafayette situation and he just doesn't see the field, we are all gonna be ridiculously pissed off about that. It can't happen. I think the days, frankly, Justin, are over of Luke Fickell not playing the best players. I mean, you've seen what happens when you let coaches, especially linebacking coaches, certain people like dictate who's playing. You're going to have to play the best players. And you did see that a little bit as the season would progress. And Heiberger, Clayton, those are two names we need to see play next year at pass rushing.
Well, these are the two most physically talented guys in that room. Like, I'm sorry, they just are. I know you've got some other guys you like. They're not as athletically talented as what these guys are. I'm sorry, if you play Peterson over Heiberger this next year, I don't know what you're thinking.
I mean, look, spring is going to tell us a lot, right? Because I'll tell you what, like, spring's going to tell us a ton because we'll see who's actually getting real reps. Greg Lincecum asked, has Fickell ever played young guys? Well, he played Christian Allegro.
He played
Christian Allegro as a freshman,
and
did get good reps. So, yeah, I mean, look, I think that it's not enough. It needs to happen. Nicholas Clayton is certainly, that game is giving him a lot of buzz. He is a name that, we've talked a lot about, but to be fair, there are other names like Heiberger that we want to see get playing time too. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, if Clayton doesn't play right away, I'm not going to be that upset about it. He's a freshman. Like, let the man get in there, let him bed into the team, and let's see how he's going. Now, if we're not getting really, really great production early on, then yeah, you do need to play him. But I'm okay. He's still going to be a true freshman. Like, he needs to play, yes, but I don't think he necessarily is like he has to jump everybody in the depth chart because we saw him play in the Under Armour game. Like,
it's not that a little bit. To me, I just look at it strictly from a skill set standpoint and say there are guys that I think you need to get on the field. And I think that he's a guy that has enough talent that, like, when we talk about being able to retain guys, he's a guy that I don't see an issue with saying, hey, we're going to get you 5 snaps a game or 10 snaps a game to get you on the field so that you can give him that taste and let him know we have things we still need to work with you on, but we do envision you having a major impact on this defense. And that's the issue that I've had with what we've been doing up to this point. There are young guys that could have played last year. Lafayette, you can't tell me you couldn't have got him 5 snaps.
I mean, we all agree with you on that. It's just, I mean, Heiberger, there's so many people.
Give him a taste to let him know that you're going to, like, you're serious about getting him playing time, especially when the guys in front of him, where I'm sorry, we could take them off the field and their name would have been called just as much as it was.
Yeah.
Like, those guys wouldn't do anything.
And to that point, Murph, by the way, haven't seen Murph on here in a long time. Welcome back, buddy. Murph says Peterson has probably 700 live game snaps and has accumulated basically nothing.
I bet it's more than that.
Can't start. I mean, he was what we had last year, at least to start. This year, we don't necessarily need him to start, but I don't know, man. It's going to be really interesting to see how these new players and how, frankly, the class of 24 beds into this team more and how much we see them, like a Heiberger. And I mean, Heiberger is like, more so than Clayton. I want to see Heiberger right away. I want to see what he has. But again, we're only a couple months away from spring football. And that's really when we're going to see what's happening, because you will lose players out of the spring.
Absolutely.
There are people that are not going to get playing time they want. And I'm telling you, we're going to have a whole nother cycle of shows about, we lost this guy to the portal. We lost this guy to the portal. So,
and it could be guys we just got in.
Right. We're going to learn a lot about what happens with this team, because it's a little crazy. I was going to say this until later, but I'm just going to put it now because it's a good time to talk about it. You guys have heard me talk about Average Joe on Twitter, the mayor of Realville. He does this graphic. This is an updated one with Ricardo Hallman back on there as well. Ricardo Hallman is returning, which is fantastic news, which we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But just kind of looking at the pass rushers, I mean, you see obviously Heiberger and Leteju that are going to be in that 24 class. But then there's still like Mason Reiger, Daryl Peterson, Aaron Witt's still there as well. Cheeks definitely showed a lot last year. And then Tyrese Fearbree, and we'll see kind of what he can bring. There are more people still that can rush the passer, but Nick Clayton definitely brings a whole different level of upside. It's more upside for me than anything else. I'm not saying he's going to have the production next year, but boy, the upside in the pass rush just went that much higher. And that's
if he gets to 240 pounds, he's going to be a monster.
Yeah.
If he can keep that level of explosiveness and put on some muscle, like we talk about guys like Herbig, but you're talking about a bigger frame. Like he's 6'4" with the length and with that level of bend. I love Herbig. I love, some of these other guys, Heiberger and Clayton. They're NFL prototypical outside guys with their length. Like that's what they're looking for. You could say Clayton's a little bit thinner probably than what you're looking for from a frame standpoint, but they want 6'4", they want lanky, they want guys who they can pack weight on and hopefully carry 250, because if you can get that frame with that speed, you then have a guy that hopefully can set the edge in the run game, but is also super explosive off the edge. Guys like Herbig in the NFL, they're concerned with being swallowed up.
Yeah.
That's why they don't want a 6'2" outside linebacker.
And, quickly, before we get into the basketball grades, to touch on the NFL really quickly, congratulations to 3 Badgers that are all pros this year. TJ Watt, Andrew Van Ginkel from Minnesota, all linebackers, and of course, Zach Bond, who's just having a hell of a season. That dude's about to get paid. Because he's a free agent and he's about to get some serious linebacker money. I'm not a Steelers fan, but I do enjoy watching them because you see this line of Badgers everywhere. Every time you see, it's great. And you can look across the we haven't even talked about offensive linemen. You can see so many offensive linemen in the league and so many players. So congratulations to those guys. Absolute studs in the NFL. And I'm pumped. And we haven't talked about guys like Isaac Arenda, who had a great year this year. I mean, there's so many guys. There's offensive linemen everywhere. Too many for us to name. And even obviously with Pittsburgh, like Nick Herbig, Keanu Benson, like all are having great careers so far. So there's a lot to be excited about looking at Badgers in the NFL. But those 3 guys, all pro. It's not Pro Bowl. They're all pro. That's another level up in designation. So very much congratulations to TJ Watt, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Zach Bond. Great linebacking. All right, let's talk basketball. We are looking good. We're 13-3. We're 3-2 in conference. We did exactly what we needed, Justin, getting out of that 0-2 hole to win 3 straight games. I'm liking what I'm seeing right now. We're basically midway through the season. We're 16 games in. I think 31 is the total for the year. So we're basically halfway through. Let's talk about grades. Okay. And of course, we're going to end with the one you all want to hear from Justin, which is the coach. But we'll start with the starting 5. We'll move into the bench. Didn't get into the coach. Then we're going to do some superlatives. If you listen to this show later, I'm very curious to hear what everyone listening to the show has to say. Put your stuff in the comments. We'll try to kind of compile them and talk about them on our next show. So even if you're not watching this live, please definitely put your stuff in the comments. I'm very curious to see what you guys think about all these. Okay, we'll start here. John Blackwell, Justin, give me a grade. Had a good year so far. Certainly one of our best players. What's your grade on John Blackwell thus far in the season?
He's an A. I think he's clearly stepped up his game significantly from where he was last year. The questions that we had on him in terms of being able to be a consistent scorer as a guy who was going to get a lot more attention this year, he's answered that, I feel. Once in a while, you can look at him and say you'd like to see him be a little more aggressive. But when he gets aggressive, man, he is really hard to stop. I'd say he's their best player. I don't think it's particularly close. I love what Tonje did to start the season. But I think that if you removed him from this team, it would cripple this team. Like he adds so much well-rounded basketball to this team, especially being the guy who also facilitates, that I think that it would be really hard for this team to function without a player like him.
Yeah, I mean, he's so critical. And just to bring it up, Tyler did ask a question about the grades. So what we're doing with the grades is we're going to basically kind of base it off of like their performance, but more towards their potential. And I guess compared to their potential. And here, let me give you an example. Carter Gilmore is going to have a higher grade than Max Klesmit. Now, do we really think Max Klesmit is not a better basketball player than Carter Gilmore? Probably not. But Carter Gilmore's having a higher grade because Carter Gilmore has clearly
playing closer to his potential.
playing to his potential. So that's really kind of how we're grading it. So it's not necessarily best player to worst player as much as it is how is that player doing based on like as Tyler said in here, preseason expectations almost. Like what we really know they can be. And are they underperforming or overperforming? I think that's kind of where we are with that. So I'm going to say A- on Blackwell. And I love John Blackwell. His shooting percentages went down, which of course we knew was going to happen. The only negative, the only thing that I will say with John Blackwell is I almost want him to be more aggressive. You said it just now. When he's ready to turn it on, he can change a game. I just kind of want him to do that more often, especially at times when we're struggling. Now, we don't have the long scoring droughts that this team has been plagued with for years, but even early in that last game that we played, we were struggling early. I want him to just put that offense on his back sometimes and find a way to make a play. I mean, I got nothing bad to say about John Blackwell. I think he's had an unbelievable year, but I will give him an A- just because turn it up a little bit more sometimes. Like he can be more aggressive. I want him to be more aggressive. I don't want any aggressive pulled back from John Blackwell because he is a dynamic athlete, a dynamic scorer. And without him, we are frankly just nothing. I mean, he is a critical aspect of this team. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm at the aforementioned Max Klesmit. I'll start here. I got to say, I'm going C- for Max Klesmit. I struggle to go to the D category because he has gone nuclear like once for like 10 minutes, but he's just not playing very aggressive. He's not a lower grade because I still think he's an impactful player at times. He has made shots. He has played. He's worked hard on the defensive side of the ball, but ultimately he's here to shoot and he's not making them. It takes him some time to get into games. He needs to get out there, shoot a couple, get to the free throw line, but I just feel like he's limited out there and he's kind of dwarfed by the success of Tonje and Blackwell. And frankly, even the front court is who's performing better and the bench. Like if you look across the team, starters and bench, and you're saying, well, who's really just not pulling their weight? It's kind of Max Klesmit, Justin. I hate to say that, but I feel like that's where he is. I'm going C-.
I am going to give him the D+. I do think that we have high expectations for him, and I feel like he has not delivered on that. But I will also say I'm not happy with the way that he is attacking the fact that he's struggling. He seems really comfortable just jacking up bad threes, and he's clearly not feeling it. Like something, I don't know if he's just. It's kind of like a hitter in baseball when you're doing something wrong. It just everything kind of looks bad. And that's kind of what's going on with his jumper at this point. And it's like, just stop shooting from the perimeter. Attack the rim. Yep. Try to get yourself some easier shots. Try to get to the line a little bit.
He's not doing it enough. That's such a good point. He's not doing it enough.
And it's like you're settling and they know you're not shooting well. So to some extent, teams are looking at it as just like, keep going. We're okay with this because we know what you're capable of. And right now, if there's one shooter I don't necessarily want shooting, it's kind of Klesmit. Like of the guys who are scorers on this team, I kind of want him to give the ball up when he's out on the court and we have both Tonje and Blackwell out there with him. I want those two taking the shots. I don't want Klesmit taking shots, but he's getting the open looks. The problem is that he's not hitting them. And it's like, I need you. I realize you want a shooter to shoot, but at some point we need to get shots from guys who are actively being efficient with them. And you're just not right now.
So for me, I don't think I ever want Klesmit to pass up an open shot. Like I want Klesmit taking an open shot. I don't want him passing it up because first of all, if he does that, what does that say about his confidence? Like his confidence will go into the tank if he doesn't take open shots. So I want him to do that for sure. Ryan says 2 quick things on Klesmit. Opposing defenses still close out on him. So he creates space and his assist rate second highest on the team. Fair. That's a fair point. I mean,
it's a quibble on him. Like the issue is that if this team is going to hit its peak and what it's capable of, they need Klesmit to play well. And right now, he's got to find ways to get himself on track.
Yeah, I mean, look, I want him to shoot layups. I want him to take mid-range jumpers. Like he did it in the Rutgers game. He went down. He got very low and just kind of have a little stop and pop in the lane. Do something to get going. I do still want him to take open shots. I do, but hopefully he will come around. Okay. Tonje, Justin, where are we at on Tonje? What's your grade so far?
I think if we're basing it off of what we thought he was capable of coming into this season, I think you have to give him an A. I mean, he's averaging what, like 18, 17 points a game, something like that.
18.2, I believe. 18.2, I believe, yeah.
And we probably expected him to be like 10 or 11, maybe maximum. Like, I think that's what we probably expected out of him. He's been leaps and bounds above what we expected. I do think he's coming back down to earth. We'll see how he finishes this season. I think teams have figured him out a little bit in terms of how to guard him. And he does settle for threes a little bit more than what I would like at times.
But he makes them.
He does. He shoots well from the perimeter. But I do think that with what he's capable of in terms of drawing fouls, and somebody has had to have gone to the refs at this point with him, because it does feel like some of those foul calls have dried up. And he's just not getting the benefit of the doubt anymore on it, because that one game basically triggered them to the point where they're like, no, we're not giving you foul calls anymore. But I think based off of what we expected from him, he's one of our better rebounders. Defensively, he's been solid, and he's, our best scorer right now, even though I would actually say that Blackwell is the better scorer. But from an actual statistical standpoint, he is the guy.
Yeah, to me, he's an A, and it's not close. The guy basically carried us early in the season. You're right. I mean, obviously, and Ryan certainly talked about a lot about this as well. He's being keyed on. Like, that's obviously something that he's going to change how defenses play. I think your point about the refs is totally right on. He was drawing a ton of fouls. He was getting to the foul line 20 times a game. Like, that obviously was going to change. I want him to stay aggressive. I want him to be in control when he's doing that stuff. But he is a dynamic athlete, and he can put the ball on the floor when he needs to. He is, and there have been times where I'm like, ooh, did he really need to shoot that? But then he just goes in. He can change a game. Like, he has that ability to just be like, you know what? I'm going to do this. Like we talked about with Blackwell. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to step up. I'm going to take this big shot and I'm going to make it. Because when we're down 6 and we really need a bucket now, I'm just going to take it. He has that killer mentality. And I think he's going to get better as the season goes. His confidence is obviously high. It was high. It's kind of gone down a little bit. As this offense continues to evolve, a new offense, right? And we continue to get more people involved. Like, look what Xavier Amos did defensively the other night. Like, now all of a sudden, if we can get more guys being involved, I think it will take some of the pressure off Tonje, and that confidence can come right back up. But for so far what he's done this season, it's not close. It's an A for me. He's been without a doubt our most important addition, no doubt about that, and probably our most important player. All right, Nolan Winter. I'm going B+ for Nolan Winter. I'm happy with Nolan Winter. I think it's been great. The only reason I'm giving him a B+ is just because I can't get out of my head the rebounding woes this team has had, and so both the bigs are getting a little tick down, just because we have to be better at rebounding. And there's times where Nolan Winter just ball watches, doesn't really make the block out like he should, and get rebounds, because he can rebound a little better. Now, that being said, I'm really happy. I was almost an A- for me, just because Nolan Winter is really growing in front of our eyes. He got bigger in the offseason. He's playing bigger. He's playing more confident. He's shooting from the 3 easily. He's cutting to the basket when he needs to. I think he's playing fairly well defensively. He's walled up a few times, which is nice. He's hedging high on the pick and rolls. I don't really have anything negative to say about Nolan Winter, other than the fact that early in the season, he was, having issues like pump faking. He wasn't pump faking. He was getting a lot of shots blocked because his awareness wasn't really there. That's improved, but it's just rebounding. It's the only thing. And it's really not him specifically as much as it is the team. So the bigs, in my eyes, are getting a bit of a hit on the grades because the rebounding has been so bad.
Yeah, he's a B+ to me. And the looking at him as a player this season, I didn't expect him to be super physical. I thought rebounding would be some of it a struggle, because I knew that he still had work to do in terms of his body. I think that he shows effort on the rebounding end, which is something that at times, like, he's got a better awareness and it seems better at attacking the ball than what Crowl is for rebounds. And it's showing in the numbers how many rebounds he actually gets. But this is a guy that is a true sophomore, and statistically, he's scoring well in the Big Ten. Like, that is not something we typically see from our bigs here. Like, I think people are not really aware. Go back and take a look at Frank Kaminsky, a guy who ended up being a National Player of the Year, what he did as a sophomore. It was nowhere near what Nolan Winter is doing right now. Now, Kaminsky probably had a higher ceiling. I won't argue that at all. But what I'm saying is he's ahead of the curve. Like, this is a guy who is probably going to be a really, really good player. I believe Ryan compared him to Lure. I think that's a really good comparison for him.
Yep.
Lure is a guy who struggled a little bit with strength early on too, because he was a kind of a beanpole. Similar athletes. I think that he's really playing well for a guy who's a true sophomore. I'm
already increasing my grade. It's A-. I can't even have B in front of Nolan Winter's name. I can't, because
I think that's a fair grade. Like this
61.5% field goal percentage. 61.5. And it's not like all of his shots are dunks. Now, I know he has a lot from the paint, but come on, man. The guy's shooting.
I'm just happy to see a big man dunk.
He's shooting 37% from three. His 2-point percentage, obviously, is 75%. He is rebounding 6. He's getting 6 rebounds a game. But, I mean, 11 points. Nolan Winter's had a great season. I mean, it's just what's happening for sure. Okay, Justin, give me Steven Crowl. Where are you on Steven Crowl? I'm going to put this comment up there before you give me this. Not a whale, which I love. Aggressive Crowl, A. Passive Crowl, F. That's a pretty funny one. But what are you giving?
It's not totally wrong, and that's kind of
not wrong.
I'm C+ overall for the season because he had such a kind of horrific start to the year. He's been really good these last 4 or 5 games, but he was the problem earlier in the season with his lack of aggressiveness. And it was costing us in games. Now, the backcourt was so good, it didn't really matter a lot in most of the games. But his inability to be physical defensively and also just rebound in general is just a killer on this team. And it's hard for me to really go super high with the big man grades simply because they are the limitation to this team. Like, whatever potentially may cost us in this season is largely going to be a game in which we cannot compete with our front court players.
Like Michigan.
Yeah. That's probably going to be what ends up costing us this tournament game. They're going to get into a game, and it's going to be a team that has a big that's physical that neither one of them can guard, and it's just going to be a problem.
Yeah, so I'm a little higher on that than you on this. I'm giving Steven Crowl a B. Yes, like early in the season, it was definitely less because he just wasn't being aggressive. But boy, his last few games, man, has been an A+ for me. So I feel like it drives up the grade. I think overall, I guess I'm saying I'm overall happy with him. It's a B. I think he's only going in one direction at this point in the season. He's really taken strides. Whatever was said, obviously we know what Greg Gard said publicly. We don't know what was said privately, but we do know that it worked. And it lit a fire under Steven Crowl's ass. And I'll tell you what, that was great because we have seen a different Steven Crowl. As Nottawell said, the aggressive Crowl is a total A player, and a passive Crowl is kind of an F player. I mean, it really sums it up there. You're absolutely right about the physical bigs are going to give us problems, which is again why it's not a higher grade because the rebounding has been poor. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, though, as you said, it's limitations. It's kind of where we are. Our bigs, Ryan always says this, our bigs are our bigs. Like, he is who he is. And I can appreciate who he is, but we're going to need to figure something out on this. Yeah. We're going to get to the glass at another superlative for sure. But I think that I'm overall pleased with what I'm seeing from him, especially the turnaround. That kind of mentality to have your coach call you out as a fifth-year guy, to really be coming into the season as one of our most critical players on the team, and then pretty much lay an egg to start the season. I think he's had a really nice comeback. And boy, I mean, if he plays that kind of aggressiveness and shoots the three when you're open, Steve, you gotta shoot, because if you don't shoot, you're not spacing the floor well. And also, he makes it. He's a pretty good shooter. What is he shooting from the 3-point line this year? 35%. Yeah, I mean,
he's
keep going.
30s. Yeah.
Keep shooting. Okay, where were we? So that was Steven Crowl. Okay, Kamari McGee. We're onto the bench now. Kamari McGee. Give me your grade for McGee. Yeah, it has to be, right?
He's shooting, 50-some% from three and playing good defense, and he's the spark plug off the bench. I couldn't ask for more from him, especially from when you look at what he's capable of as a player, like what his limitations are. He is absolutely maximizing what he's capable of.
I mean, Kamari McGee has taken 33 3-pointers this year, and he's shooting 57.6% from three. I mean, come on, man.
I expect it to go in now every time he puts one up.
Dude, Kamari McGee, absolute A+. There is no other grade than Kamari McGee gets. He has been such an amazing story this year. There was a question on Locked On's Discord today that was, what's the bigger story? Is it Carter Gilmore or is it Kamari McGee? To me, the answer is Kamari McGee, because he was good last year. He had some injury problems. He never really was able to break into the lineup of just consistent minutes. He is playing like his hair's on fire constantly. Like he's just the energy he brings. And it's not just energy, it's poise. He's playing poised, aggressive basketball. And that shows in the way that he's defending. That shows in the way that he's controlling the ball. He's taking good shots. Like he knows when to take a shot. He knows when to pass. He's making good decisions. I don't have a single thing to complain about with Kamari McGee. Not one. He will absolutely be the highest grade that I give out today. Mm-hmm. And there's just nothing else to it. What a fantastic season that he's having. And I really hope he can continue this all year. Now, 57%, not going to continue all year. But being that smart of a shooter and aggressive when you need to be, listen, man, all day love for Kamari McGee. Mm-hmm. And Will Hanna says, how can you give anyone an A+? This is how you give someone an A+. The guy's shooting 57% from three, and we basically expected him to be a rotational player at best.
Yeah,
depth piece at best.
Yeah, we're talking about based off of his skill set, what we think he's capable of as a player. He is playing to his potential. Like, where would you say that he is underperforming based off of what his physical abilities are? I just don't think that there's a place that I can look at with him where I'm like, you know what? I expect more from him in this. Like, he's played above and beyond what I expected from this season. It's not close. Like, he's been super productive for them as a guy that I expected to give fringe minutes, maybe 10 minutes a game, and be like, all right, well, he's solid defensively, and he won't be like, he'll occasionally hit a three here or there or get a bucket. He's been way beyond that this year.
Scott S. The Bucky Report A+, best Wisconsin podcast. Well, thank you, Scott. Us and Locked On Badgers. As long as you're not giving anyone else that grade, that works for me. But anyway, it's great. Thank you very much for your support. Greg Linscomb says McGee is one of the best leaders on the team. Tyler Strieber. McGee has grown so much since his first year at UW. Credit to him for putting in the work. Nice to see him get the start the other night versus Minnesota. Will Hanna says that is why I gave him an A-, A- to A, which is still outstanding. He did get my highest grade. That's fair. If you don't want to give anyone an A+, I understand. I'm simply conveying the point that I don't think he could be doing any better than he is, and that's why he's an A+.
Exactly, and that's how I feel too. Like, I just don't think he's maximized his skill set to this point in the season.
Yeah,
it's like Crowl being a C+, he could be much better by the end of the season, but he's got to continue what he's been doing.
So Carter Gilmore. What's another going to be a good grade for us here? Give me your grade on Carter Gilmore.
He's an A- for me. I think that he's substantially better than what we've seen from him in prior seasons. He's been at least a credible threat from outside where you can't just not cover him. He's actively hit 4 or 5 threes, I think, this year. And he was 2 for 30 or whatever in a couple of other seasons. So he's substantially better in that regard. He plays really hard every game. This is what you hope to get from him when you look at him as a player. Like, he's not a guy that's overly skilled offensively. He's a guy who's grit and plays physical and hard. And you get that from him every game. And you also get a little bit of scoring punch that was unexpected this season.
Yeah. So for me, also A-, by the way. I love the grade on him. Carter Gilmore is averaging 14.8 minutes a game. He has shot 23s and made 7 of them, 35% from 3. He's only averaging two rebounds a game, which I actually thought his rebounds a game were a little bit higher than that. I'm surprised by that. But he's the hustle guy. And one of the things that Carter Gilmore doesn't show up in the stat sheet as much too. He is just hustle. He's a glue guy. He's working his tail off. Ultimately, what I will say about
post defender.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. What I will say about Carter Gilmore is this. It's not just because of us. It's because, I mean, you listen across, if you go to last year and you listen across any Wisconsin, whether it's podcast or beat writer, all you're hearing about Carter Gilmore is, why is that man getting minutes? We don't want him to get minutes. We need him replaced. We can't do it. That's the entire sentiment last year. And now every single one of those people are giving him a grade like this, because you can't take a step like Carter Gilmore had without just putting everything on the line and just saying, you know what? I don't care what people say about it. I'm just going to work my butt off. Kudos to Carter Gilmore. Absolutely I give him so much credit. He is not the most talented guy in the world. He's not the most talented guy anywhere. I mean, on a lot of teams, but he gives more effort than a lot of guys give. And he took the time to improve his 3-point shot. He knew that was a deficit. Last year, when Carter Gilmore or Tyler Wall, either one of the fours, were in the game, you knew neither of them were shooting. And now they're here. What are the fours? Nolan Winter and Carter Gilmore. They're both shooting. That makes such a difference, right? So thank you to Kirk Penny and Greg Gard, who we'll talk about. But it's just so much effort for Carter Gilmore. Absolutely. He's an A- for me. Okay, Xavier Amos. I'm going to go first here. I'm going to take, I'm going to say C+. Honestly, for Amos, I struggle with this one because I think I just expected more from him. He had an amazing defensive game against Minnesota, against Garcia, who torched us in the first half. He was there. He was the most athletic guy that could actually cover. He's an athletic 4. Ryan talks a lot about this. Listen to him too, as he does a lot of good stuff on Amos. He's too trigger happy for me. There's times where I just don't want him to shoot that. I know he should be able to shoot, and he can, but I don't necessarily want him taking as many threes as he's taken. I don't necessarily want him to drive either. I just want him to be in better positions, try to score in the lane at times, but he has to keep that defensive intensity all year. Now, if he would have played the second half he had against Garcia, against Minnesota, if that would have been how he played all year, he would have had a much higher grade from me. I do expect that our end of year grades, I expect this to be higher, because I do think he might have just turned a corner a bit defensively, and hopefully he's able to kind of to build upon that. But for now, C+ for me for Amos.
So I was obviously very critical of him earlier in the season, and I still kind of am. He's a C for me. I do think there's a lot of opportunity for growth. I think that he struggled defensively at times, and he was not a great rebounder earlier in the season. He is growing. There were honestly periods early in the season where I just felt like he was playing a different game than every other player in the offense out there. Like everyone else was running an offense, and he was just like, he got the ball and he's like, I can stand in this exact spot and shoot every single time. There's a couple of things that really stood out to me. Those screen and rolls that he had against was it Minnesota?
Mm-hmm.
That is something big from him to start seeing some of that. He's attacking the rim a lot more than he was in the past.
He did attack the rim against Minnesota almost too much.
That's growth from him, in my opinion. Like, those are shots that I'm comfortable with him trying to push, versus just when the ball actually gets to you, just being a complete ball stopper and jacking up a bad 3. And a lot of the times it is a bad 3 with him. Like when we scored 116 in that game, I watched him put up those 2 shots, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're just happy to be in the game, like, instantly. These are Ilver shots. Like, these are what we killed Marcus Ilver for when he came in, like, his first couple of seasons, and he was instantly putting the ball up the second he touched it. I do think he does get better over the course of the season. And I think by the end of the season, I think he's going to be a really nice reserve. But there are times when I watch him early in the season offensively, and I'm like, your basketball IQ at times leaves a lot to be desired. And I think he's growing. So I'm glad to see some growth from him.
The one stat I'll give you, Xavier Amos, is that he plays 10 minutes a game, and he's taken the same number of 3-point shots as Kamari McGee, 33. That's too much. That's just too much. Like,
it is.
I mean,
because he's a ball stopper.
Kamari McGee's shooting 58%, and he's shooting 35. It's not like he's horrible, but it's just it's a lot in 10 minutes a game. That's a lot.
You need to understand the situation. And at times when he gets a hold of the ball and he puts it up, it's like, that was not the shot you needed in this particular possession.
Yeah. Okay. So Janicki. What are your thoughts on this? Is an interesting grade, especially when we're comparing it to like expectations. What are your thoughts on Janicki?
Well, he's a true freshman guy who's a walk-on. I give that guy a B+ right now. Like, he's been really impressive. There are some times when you look at it where it's just like, what do you seem to have just like lost it. Like, you need to remember he's a freshman. Like, when I watch him play, because he does a lot of things really well, and there are times when he kind of does something a little boneheaded where you're like, all right, he's going to grow from this. Some of the times when he attacks the rim on a break, I'm just like, that's not your game, my man. Just don't do it, or learn to use your body better, because
For the record,
you're not attacking the rim.
I actually, this actually really annoys me. Like, I feel like many times this season we've had some fast breaks where people they get blocked. It's just, hey, sometimes, especially when you're leading a game, just take the ball, just go take a step back, just take the ball, just put it back out, like, get a better look. If you got a wide open something, that's fine. But Janicki was he was never going to score on that. He was never.
There are a couple times where he just got volleyball spiked going off.
Yeah, just take a minute, understand awareness, and recognize, like, is going in the best thing in this moment. Now, I'm not saying I like aggressiveness. I'm not trying to tamper that. I just sometimes, like, we've had a fair amount of that this year where we've had some fast breaks that just didn't work. But yeah, so I'm a B- on Janicki. I agree. He's freshman, playing well. Just in the last few games, he's looked like he kind of came back down to earth. He looked like he was going to be, this is going to be a really big player for us. And I'm not saying he can't be. I like the way he plays. I like the passion he plays with. You can see the heart on his sleeve. Like, he wants to be good.
He's a smart player too. Like, when I watch him on the court, he understands the moment a lot more than most of the guys do.
And I think that ultimately, that's kind of what's been his undoing the last few games. I think sometimes we haven't seen him be smart of the moment lately. So anyway, B- for me. Nothing too crazy. We didn't go anymore. We could grade Ilver if you like. There's really not. I mean, we could go all the way down, but I feel like Ilver just hasn't played enough for us to really grade. All right, Justin. Greg Gard, 13-3, 3-2 on the season, halfway through the basketball season. What are you giving Greg Gard? I'm curious about this.
Yeah, I think I would probably give him an A- right now. I would say the one thing that is still stuck in my craws, we've needed a big for a couple seasons now. Like, that's the one thing that we truly probably needed, was to find somebody who could add some muscle. And I don't know how much of that is just he doesn't have the resources to be able to make that happen. But it's been a struggle, and we're not doing a great job of identifying that player in recruiting. Like, that's been Wisconsin's issue for a while now. And it's like you dipped your toe in there once with Hodges, and then you just like, ooh, the water's cold, I'm never going back. And it's like, you can't. You've got to find a guy who's capable of kind of being that physical presence in the post, and is capable. I don't care if all they can do is play defense and just get a putback dunk here and there. You've got to find a guy like that to have on your roster, because there's going to be a game where you need it. Yeah.
Rajeev. I just put a ticker on the screen for those watching on YouTube. Breaking news: Justin gives Greg Gard an A-. I cannot believe that you actually gave him that grade. I agree with you, but I mean, I think this is wonderful.
I'm a realist. I'm not going to crap on the guy when he's had a good season to this point. He's got to continue it. It does not mean that's going to be his end of season grade.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm going to give him the credit for what he's done to this point in the season, which this team has probably been, I think, what did we discuss earlier? The non-con, we said, I think 11 and whatever, 2 or 3 or something like this. This is roughly where we expected to be.
We expected that they only had one loss. They only had one loss in the non-con, and it was. I
think we said maybe at maximum 2. We figured was
right. It was the Marquette game, and I agree. Like, so look, for me, it's an A, and I mean, I'm not just being a homer. Like, I do. Obviously, I'm in the guard. I'm in the liking guard camp. It's the adjustments for me. The adjustments he's made offensively. Thank you, Kirk Penny.
Much better.
And that to me is why it has to be an A for me. Now, you could argue, well, defensively, we're still not quite there. Rebounding has been an issue, but ultimately, the one issue we've had with Gard from day one, the thing that continuously happens, is adjustments. Well, he's making them. He has made them. We are a totally different offensive team than we have been in the past, and it's nice to see. I frankly, I like the usage of the roster, the rotations. I haven't had a lot of issues with what he's doing. He's playing some small ball occasionally when necessary. I think he's doing a nice job. I think he did a really good job developing Nolan Winter in the offseason and kind of getting him to bulk up and improving his game a lot. And also I would point to in-season adjustments and in-season development. I talked about Nolan Winter. I've said this a lot lately about his mentality and his awareness. And look at what Kamari McGee is doing. Like, that team is gelling. They seem to love each other. They've got one heck of a unit. The culture seems really strong. Now, going into the season, I don't think any of us thought that. A lot of people thought he needs to go. You're certainly one of them. I'm certainly not. But there was certainly a 50-50 split in the fan base, and there was a lot of criticism against Greg Gard. Well, but yet, based on how he's done so far, to me, it's an A, because he's far exceeding expectations, as far as I'm concerned, about how well this team was going to be coached. And things to late game situations we haven't seen a ton of yet, but you can't. It's hard for me to point to a lot of things where I'm like, boy, Gard's just getting this wrong. I don't think he is. I think he's done a great job. It's an A for me, but I mean, I think people are probably going to disagree. Will Hanna says B- to B+ to A-. P says, tell him, Rajeev, we got to believe. Thank you. P's always a believer. I mean, it's not really easy to point to things that he's done wrong, Justin. Like, he's done a pretty good job.
What I will say is, when I look at him from this standpoint, and this is where people I think are going to frustrate me, is there are a lot of people out there like, well, he can just work in the portal in order to make this work every year. And I am staunchly against that from the standpoint of, I just don't think you can rely on getting difference makers year to year in the portal. You can't. You've got to get those guys. Like, listen, we've talked about Tonje. I really like him as a piece. I don't think that Tonje is a guy that carries you in March. If there's a guy that's going to carry us in March, it's going to be Blackwell. I think his ceiling's higher. I just think he's got a more well-rounded skill set, and he's a scarier player for teams. And I believe that you still have to get your best players from your high school recruiting.
Yeah.
So when I look at this, it's the people that think they could, oh, no, he doesn't have to do high school recruiting well. Now, listen, this team is playing well because he hit on 2 high school recruits. He hit on Blackwell and he hit on Winter. He's got to keep doing this. Janicki, an unexpected hit potentially, as a guy who could end up being, a lot like who was the cat from Germantown? Why can't I think of his name? I always forget his name, and I feel terrible about it. On the 2014-15 team, that was the walk-on. Showalter.
Oh, Zach Showalter. Yeah.
Janicki has a chance to be a Showalter type player. Different skill sets, but has a chance to have that type of impact on the roster. And then you have guys like, obviously, the woman that we got out of the class, this last class, the point guard.
Robeson.
No. Robeson's
Robeson.
forward. But I do think that he's got some.
You're talking about free tag.
Free tag.
Yeah.
Free tag has got to be a hit. Like, you've got to be. Robeson's got to at least be a Duye Dukin type player. Like, if you want to build this out, this is what these guys are going to have to be. I do think that he is going to get more opportunities. If this is what the offense is, it's going to help him in recruiting, but he's going to have to learn to close. What I do think is the plus here, and this is where things are going to get really interesting from a college basketball. I think there is a way that things are going to get – it's going to get tipped on its head, because what you're going to have happen is the schools that are not football schools, that are basketball schools, are going to be the ones that are going to start running the show, because they're going to take that money, that $20 million or whatever it is that they're saying that schools can put for like a salary cap. You're going to see schools that are going to take 15 of that and throw it towards basketball, and things are going to get real crazy, because you'll be able to go out there and offer somebody $3 million a year to come play for you and change the dynamic of everything, because there's going to be schools that have more pedigree when it comes to basketball than football. UCLA might be one of them. Like, that $20 million, wouldn't it be shocked to see that be split down the middle for them? Whereas, because football hasn't been as big, recently. Kansas might be one of those schools, although I think football there has turned a little bit. We'll see what happens. But Kentucky is another one. Like, taking $15 million might go to Kentucky straight to basketball.
Well, I mean, and there's going to be schools, but there's very few that are going to have that kind of a.
It is, but there's a lot of those schools that are better at one sport than the other.
That's fair, but there's also a lot of players out there. I mean, you're talking about you're not going to pay 12 guys that. I mean, you're only going to pay a few. Like there's a decent amount of talent to go around that I think that will equalize itself out. There's a whole bunch of stuff in that legislation that we'll get into when that happens because I don't understand it. Hardly half of it. It's bananas, but nonetheless. I mean, and Not a Whale says, I want to bring this up here. Gard still needs to win some games in the tourney. Can he outcoach the opponent's coach when it's do or die time? So that's my other point on Greg Gard is this is the midseason grade. We're doing midseason grades right now because we're literally halfway through.
Based off of the body of work.
And what we're seeing so far is Greg Gard's doing a great job. 100%. If he loses in the first game of the tournament, then it's not an A grade. It's not even
with
close
how
to
this
that.
team has played, that would be a massive failure.
For sure. Like, I mean, obviously it depends on the match. It depends on a lot of things, but I don't want him to lose. Because I think they're going to have a pretty good seed. I think this team is really good. I know that you're not 100% sold that they're going to make the tournament, but I think they definitely are. And I think they're going to probably be a top 5 seed again. Just their net ranking, their Ken Pom rankings are there. If things continue. Now, if he has a drop off, that's different.
If he goes 26-6, which would be just basically doubling out this record, which there's a possibility. I wouldn't say it's a high probability, but if that happens, I would say he's going to be a top 3 or 4 seed.
Well, if he goes 26-6, is going to wheeze. That means we're going to be a 15-5 in the conference, and we're probably going to win the Big Ten. I don't think that's going to happen because then you're going to be a higher seed. We only have one non-conference loss. Yeah. If we go 26-6, that means we're going 15-5 in the conference. That ain't happening. That's my. Yeah. I just think like
there's going to be a lull here when things just get a grind. That's going to start happening.
Now we are 3-2. We did play 2 very good opponents, Michigan and Illinois. Michigan has turned out to be a hell of a team. They're undefeated in conference right now.
What a difference a different coach makes.
Right. I mean, please, Juwan Howard. Well, come back to coach any other Big Ten team anytime you want, bud. Just not ours.
Back to Michigan.
I would welcome Juwan Howard to any of our. Go coach Marquette. That's fine. Go coach Marquette. He is a horrific coach.
They will not take him over.
Just ridiculous. I mean, it's horrible. Okay, so I did want to mention one thing quickly. I'm going to LA next week for the UCLA game. Our thoughts to all the people out in LA. I mean, I know we have some West Coast fans, and the fires out there have been crazy. I'm only 4 hours away. Yeah, I mean, it's a horrific thing that's happening and unfolding in LA. I am eager to get down there to watch the UCLA game. I don't know if it's going to be played at UCLA or not because I don't know. But our thoughts to any of you who either live out west or are affected by this or have family out west. Hopefully everyone stays safe. That is a really, really tough situation, and nature can be absolutely grueling at times. So I hope that can get resolved quickly. Moving on to some midseason awards. We'll close the show with this, Justin. We've got a few superlatives. Again, put your answers in the comments if you're listening to this later or in the comments now live. Most improved. So this is most improved player. Who is your most improved player?
This one's really tough, actually. I'm going to say it's Blackwell just because of how big of an impact he has on the team overall. But Nolan Winter is not far off in this, and you would not have expected that coming into the season. But Blackwell is just such a huge factor in this team that I think he really changes what the ceiling is for this team with how much better he is this year.
Yeah, this is a really good one. And I'm curious to see what the community thinks about this as well. I think you could go Blackwell, you could go Winter, you could go McGee, you could go Gilmore. I mean, you could really go a lot of different ways on this. I'm going to say Nolan Winter because I'm a huge Nolan Winter apologist. I'm a massive
Dirk Winter.
Dirk Winter. I'm a big believer in Nolan Winter. I think it's him. And it's not because I'm gonna have other guys for other answers here too, but I just think Nolan Winter has taken a step from a mentality perspective, body perspective, confidence perspective. He's kind of growing into his body to an extent, like in the sense that the game's kind of slowing down for him. It's just like he's like, okay, I'm a big, I'm gonna play like a big, I'm gonna act like a big, I'm gonna have swagger like a big. And that he's developing right here in front of our eyes. This school has a long history of good, solid 4s and 5s, good bigs that can shoot, that can play on the inside. And I think he's just taken a big step because last year, let's face it, we expected him to be better. And there were times where we're like, ooh, is he really a guy? He's showing like he's a guy. Again, I could give easily 4 answers for this. No question about it. But I'm picking Nolan Winter because I do really feel like he's taken a really big step.
How nice is it to see a big actually dunk underneath the hoop?
Yeah, for sure.
It's been far too long since you've seen that here.
Yeah. So again, put your most improved in the chat. I'm very curious what other people think about this as well. Okay. Biggest surprise so far. It doesn't have to be a player, just the biggest surprise so far on this team of the season. I'll go first on this one. I'll let you think about this. To me, it's all related to the offense, but the 116 points against Iowa is singular the biggest surprise. But more importantly, it's Greg Gard's adjustments offensively and Kirk Penny's effect on this team. That I did not expect that at all, and I can't imagine that we are a team that can score at this clip, that can play this quick offensively. That, obviously you're going to give up something on the defensive side when that happens, but man alive, like we really can put up points. And if you have a day where this team is shooting 40-45% from three, we are going to light it up. So I am just, this is by far the biggest surprise of this team is our ability to put up points like this, and the changes that Greg Gard has actually made to this team with Kirk Penny's influence, Greg Steensma, all these guys, like he's made changes. Kudos to him, but it's the offensive production and the efficiency on this team.
Yeah, I was thinking more of it from a player standpoint, but yeah, that's hands down. Like the offense has been significantly better and more free flowing and less restrictive. Like there's been times this year where I've watched them put up shots where I'm just like, in the past, this would be a timeout and that player's getting pulled, or somebody be at the table ready to come in for somebody because we shot too early in the shot clock. That has changed significantly this year. The pace we're playing at is far faster. There are games when we get where I'm sitting there with like 9 minutes left and we're at 60 something. I'm like, we're going to end up hitting 80 yet. And it's happened numerous times already this year. And we have halves where we play bad in the first half and we just go nuts in the second half. So it's been pretty consistent. But I will say, I would say the bench improvement is probably the thing that's been the most startling to me.
That's a great one.
Because they have actively been a positive for this team, where there's numerous guys that are able to come into the game and be a positive impact on the game. Janicki, Gilmore, who else? Why am I
Amos? Well, yeah, and certainly Amos and McGee. Look, bench production that's a great one. Bench production has been a really big plus on this team. The biggest disappointment. What have you been disappointed about so far this season more than anything else? I'll go first again. The rebounding, for God's sakes, honestly. Most of us at some point in our lives play basketball. I think you and I played basketball. I can't deal with the fact that you're ball watching, you're not blocking out, and it happens way too often. It's really, really bad. Now, it's Ryan always talks about this too. You're always giving something up. I get it. Like you're scoring as many points as you are. You're not going to have that same intensity on the defensive all the time. If you're a bad scoring team, you're probably going to be better defensively. There are times where obviously, we're running out, we're playing faster. So rebounding might take a bit of a hit. But defensive rebounding is where I'm just losing my mind right now. Like we can't give up offensive rebounds to the clip that we are. Minnesota hasn't won a game in the conference yet. And in the first half of that game, they were blowing us out of the water on the glass. Yeah. And I understand that we don't have the best positional rebounders, right? I understand that Crowl is not going to just, jump through the air at certain and dive across to get a rebound, but it's you have to give the effort. You got to block out. You have to actually act like you're doing it. There was a play, and I think it was Winter, might have been Crowl. He's literally just looking up at the basket. Meanwhile, a Minnesota player runs right around him, grabs the ball, dunks it. I'm like, no. You've got to find the player to block out. You've got to anticipate who's coming in, take the space, block out, make the rebound.
Yeah, there's too many times where they just turn to the rim and just go up for it, and guys come in from behind.
Like rather than watching it, protect your space. Find out, yes, the ball's in the air. Find a body, find a space. This is my space. No one's getting in front of me. I'm going to get the rebound. If it's a long rebound, that's one thing. But 100% the biggest disappointment has been rebounding. It's killing me.
I would say for me, it's a combination of interior post defense and just interior defense and rebounding, because those are ultimately going to be the undoing of the team if it happens. I feel like those are our weaknesses, and that's going to be like the areas where I have massive concerns when we get into big matchups. Are these guys going to be able to hold up? Will we rebound well enough, and will we play good enough on the interior defense to be able to keep them from just scoring at will? That Michigan game, I'm still having flashbacks of watching guys drive to the hoop and their bigs just attacking our bigs.
I mean,
we got abused in that game.
My friend, my wife's one of my wife's best friends texted me before that game and was like, listen, this guy, I mean, you're going to get crushed on the inside. And I was like, no, I think we'll be all right. And he was right. Boy, oh boy, Michigan's offense.
It wasn't just their bigs; their guards were attacking.
And you said it earlier in the show. That is the fear, right? That's going to be our tournament undoing. And you said that earlier. Like that really could be what ultimately takes us out. But hopefully, with better development from Winter, we can see that.
I will say one of the things that I had a concern with coming into the season was our ability to withstand pressure on the perimeter. That has not been a problem yet. Teams are not attacking us in that way, or Blackwell's just been really good at handling pressure. I think he's been pretty good at handling pressure. Part of that, I think, is that his handle has gotten a little bit better. It's still not great, but it's better than it was last year. And he's such a strong player. Like, it's really hard to get into him because he's so physical.
Yeah, it is better. And you're right. I mean, obviously not having a point guard was certainly something that we were all concerned about, but it's point guard by committee at this point. But there's a lot of ball handlers on the floor, period. Like you just got people out there that can do it. It can kind of keep control of things, which is great. All right, let's jump ahead to MVP. Actually, no, let's do the one more. Hustle Award. Give me a Hustle Award. Your best hustle for the year. Who gets your Hustle Award?
Kamari McGee.
Oh. I'm going Carter Gilmore for that. I'm Carter Gilmore just gets that for me because nobody. I feel like
I think those are the two guys that you would earmark for it.
I mean, yeah, I feel like if you were building, with our grades that we gave out, like if you just those two guys have just been such a great surprise. Even those two guys alone could be the answer to a lot of these questions. MVP for me, this is John Blackwell. I don't really know. I mean, I know you could give it to Tonje. I know you could look at other places, but John Blackwell. He's our guy. I mean, he is the best player on the floor, in my opinion. He's the most reliable scorer. He can create his own shot. He can take over a game. He can lock in defensively when he needs to. You name it, John Blackwell can do it. He's taken a massive step and deserves a ton of credit. John Blackwell is my MVP.
There's one player on this team that I look at that maybe has some NBA upside, and that's Blackwell. Now, when I say that does not mean I look at him as a guy who's going to have like a all-star type career. I think that he can be a rotational player in the NBA. I think he's got that type of upside, which there's nobody else I look at on this roster. There's some guys that are going to make some money playing overseas, but he's the only guy I look at that I'm like, that's a guy who's going to cash checks potentially in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, he's been such a critical piece for us. Look, there's a lot to look forward to on this basketball season. We've got a lot of games left, 15 Big Ten games coming up still, which is really exciting. The first of which is tomorrow night against Ohio State. We'll close the show there, Justin. Just so much to look forward to with basketball. We had such a rough football season, but now we've got some good news, right? We're excited about Jeff Grimes. We're excited about Jordan Reed. We didn't talk about Jordan Reed yet. You want to give a quick note on Jordan Reed, your thoughts on the hire?
I like him. I wide receiver coach, I just don't know who you can look at and be like, well, this guy's a stud coach at that position. Like, unless you have somebody who's got like a pedigree of putting guys like everyone talks about the guy at Ohio State and is like, is he that great coach or is he a guy who just has an NFL caliber guys coming in consistently?
I mean, Ohio State's
really good offense. Like I could probably go there and coach wide receiver if you gave me like an informational video on how to coach wide receiver, and these guys would still be going to the NFL. Like most of them are just superior athletes to everyone they're playing against. If somebody holds them accountable, they'll be good. So it's a really hard position for me to evaluate from that standpoint. I think the eye for when you look at it from just looking at a high school player and deciding, is this somebody who I think is going to grow into that type of player, whether it be at Wisconsin, you're going to have to find guys that you're going to have to find late bloomers, because if somebody's going to turn into a star, it's going to be this guy turned into, he gained a couple of ticks from his 40 time. He really filled out his body and became a star. And that's something that can be hard to find. If you have somebody that can evaluate to that level, it can be huge. And yeah, it was Brian Hartline. But when I look at it, if you're a good recruiter and you're a guy who can actively do it, there's two ways you can attack this. You can have somebody who's a really good evaluator. You can find somebody who's a really good recruiter and has the ability to actually win a couple of those battles. We're not going to steal guys from Ohio State, but if you can get a couple of those four, like low 4-star guys and hit on a couple of those, that can be really good. You got to do it one way or the other. It sounds like he's a really positive recruiter. We'll see what the talent evaluation is. If he can do both, then you got a star. If you can do one of them, then you have a good coach.
I'm a big fan of kind of like the young up and coming coach. And I think there's a lot of that in football. And
It's
I think
one of those
when I get that, you see high upside, you see the ability to identify with these players, recruiting. Like you said it right, and not really much to add. The recruiting is everything at that position. Bring in the best guys. We already put an offer in the number 126 wide receiver today. Like I'm sure that's probably just a way to send a message, but that's important. And like we're not
get it out of your system. All right,
it's like, but I appreciate the fact that we're not gonna back down. We're gonna go out there. We're trying to change things, and I like it. I'm totally good with the hire because recruiting is everything. And as we've heard, he's a good recruiter. So we'll take that from there. Sorry again for the 1 day late to the football calendar. I just wanted to watch football day yesterday, and the Packers were on, so I knew many people were going to be doing that. So the Vikings got crushed. So there's that, right? I mean, that's all you Packer fans.
So we can all enjoy that.
Some of you might be Vikings fans. Sorry, because another season in
if
the
toilet. Packers can't win, you guys can't win either. So get over it.
I mean, geez, that's for sure. We will be back again next week. Obviously, go check out Locked On Badgers for your daily stuff, of course. And tomorrow, Ohio State. Let's get another one. 4-2 if we can win tomorrow. Out of an 0-2 hole. Absolutely fantastic. Until next week, folks. As always, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.